Hey guys, in this video, we're going to take a look at how to install Nextcloud in Docker. And we're going to use a little bit of Open Media Vault and a little bit of Portainer, but we're going to install Nextcloud in Docker. We're also going to have a remote access, and we're going to have an SSL to secure everything while we're connected remotely. So before we jump into this, there's a couple of things that I want to touch on just real quick. I will say that I am starting with a brand new, fresh install of Open Media Vault, so there's nothing on it at this point. I've changed the port from port 80 to port 81 because we need port 80 and port 443 open for both Nextcloud and Let's Encrypt. So I had to move Open Media Vault over to a different port. So you will want to make sure that you do that as well. You will need a DuckDNS account. And you'll need to have DuckDNS set up on your server somewhere. Now I've got mine set up on a separate server, so you won't see that in my setup. Just know that I do have it running in a different server. Also, I've already got Docker and Portainer installed and set up. I've already got a couple of hard drives plugged in and mounted, and I've got a couple of shares. I've got one share on each drive. I've got a 250 gig drive and a 1 terabyte drive, and I've named each of those drives accordingly based on their size. I've got one that's labeled like Files 250 and Files 1000, just so I can keep track of which one is on which device. Also, now that I'm thinking about it, you may also want to make sure that your Open Media Vault server is set up on a static IP. Whether you do that through the network interfaces or you do it on your router, however you want to do that is fine. It will be better to have this set up on a static IP for the SSL to work, and so you can maintain access to everything. Now, I'm not going to talk about doing port forwarding just because it's going to be so different for everybody. You're going to have to look at your configuration and figure out how to do port forwarding on that. There are lots of tutorials about basically every device out there on how to do that, so make sure you take a look at that if you don't know how to do port forwarding. So with all that being said, let's jump over to my desktop where we will take a look at getting Nextcloud installed on Open Media Vault, and just more specifically in Docker in this case, with remote access and an SSL. Okay, so here we are on my desktop, and you can kind of see that I've got this broken up into three sections. Over here on the left-hand side, I've got Open Media Vault opened up in half the screen, and then up here at the top right, I've got PuTTY opened up and connected to my server, and then down here I've got some notes. This is actually what I was looking at just a minute ago. If you kind of saw me staring off into space, I was reading through my notes to make sure that I had everything that I needed to take care of there. So this is all stuff, well, basically everything up here has already been done. We've already talked about that. You will need to do some port forwarding. I mentioned that briefly, but you will need to make sure that you've got ports 80 and ports 443 port forwarded over to your server so that everything will work and will be accessible from the general internet. So now that we've got all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and scroll down here just a little bit. So basically what we're going to do next is we're going to create a Docker Compose file here. And basically I'm just in the root or in the home directory of my server. So what I want to do first is, like I said, create a docker compose.yml file. And we can do that by typing in nano and then docker-compose.yml. And we'll go ahead and press enter, and that's going to bring us to this basically blank screen here. And basically from here, what we're going to do is copy basically from right here where it says version 3. We're going to go all the way down to right there. I'm going to copy this. All of this will be available in the blog post linked in the description. So don't feel like you've got to figure out what I just did there. You're just going to copy and paste this from the blog post, again, linked in the description down below. So come up here and I'll just paste that in. And now what we're going to do is we're going to scroll back up, clear up to the top, and we're going to talk about kind of what's going on with all of this. Now, normally, if you're going to be using a file like this, your Portainer would have to be in swarm mode, or your Docker would have to be in swarm mode to run version 3 in Portainer. Because we're doing this in a Docker Compose YML file, we can run a version 3 with no issues here, so that's fine. So basically, the first thing we've got up here is services, and what we're going to do is install a proxy. This is going to be an Nginx proxy built on Alpine, and basically this is just going through the setup for that proxy. And here you can see we've got ports 80 and port 443. Those are the ports that we're going to need to make everything work. Below that, we've just got some volumes that we're going to link to on the server. So we'll just go ahead and leave all of this the same. We don't need to touch anything there in the proxy area. Next, we've got Let's Encrypt. Basically, this is going to be the same thing. It depends on proxy, so this won't work unless you've got proxy installed. And it's also going to create a Nextcloud network. Below that, we've got some volumes. Again, this is pretty standard stuff for getting this set up. Nothing to change in here either. If we go down a little further, we're in the database. Now we're going to use a Maria database to store all of our useful information. Instead of using an SQLite database, we're going to use an actual real database to make sure everything works appropriately. So it's going to be a MySQL database. And basically right here is the first time we're going to change anything. And these are some things you'll want to make note of for later. So you're going to need a MySQL root password. By default, that is just root backwards. You can change that. I suggest you change it to something more secure. Keep that as a note somewhere. Keep it in your password management or something in case you need it later. But you will not need the root password for anything beyond that or beyond this in this tutorial. Next, we've got a MySQL password. Now that's going to be the password for this specific database. This one, again, I've just got it set to MySQL. Change this to something more secure, but make note of this when you are going to need it later for this tutorial. The database and the user are both set to Nextcloud. You can change those if you want. There's really no need to change that. It just makes it easier to go through the process later. But you can change any of these. Just if you do, make note of them because you will need 3 of those 4 things later on here. So. And then it's going to just keep restarting unless you manually stop it. Basically, if it stops or it has a problem, it'll restart unless you manually stop the container. Below that, we've got Nextcloud. That's what we're here for. So basically, this is just saying it's going to create this container name. It's going to use this Nextcloud network. It depends on the 3 previous containers we created, the Let's Encrypt, the proxy, and the database. The volumes here, we've got Nextcloud, more volumes down here for some additional stuff here. The virtual host, this is what you're going to get from DuckDNS. The virtual host, you're going to put in the full URL, your subdomain.duckdns.org. Same thing for the Let's Encrypt host, you're going to do that as well. And then for the Let's Encrypt email, you can put whatever email address you want in there. That's just going to be to register the SSL with an email address. So basically just go ahead and fill those out with your information there. And again, this will, if it runs into a hiccup or what needs to stop or whatever, it will restart until you manually stop it. So below that, we've got some volumes for Nextcloud and the database, and then the network for the Nextcloud network. So once we've got all of that, we can do Control O and then hit Enter, and that's just going to save that file. And then we'll do Control X to exit. So now that we've got all of that done, our next step is actually going to be to execute that YML file. So we'll just type in docker compose.yml. Disregard what I just said there. We're going to do docker compose. We're not going to put the YML. I'm just real dumb this evening, apparently. So we'll go ahead and do that. There we go. So now it's going through and it's creating all of the stuff that it's going to need for the rest of this installation. It's going to do a bunch of downloading, a bunch of extracting and pulling and all kinds of stuff. This will take probably a few minutes. So just go ahead, hang out, and wait for this to complete. Okay, so here we are. Everything here is done. What we're going to do is actually just jump over here real quick to port 9000, just so, oops, actually hadn't set up Portainer yet. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So here we've got our 5 containers. So let's go over to our containers here and let's make sure that Let's Encrypt is doing its thing. Everything there looks good. So realistically, what I should be able to do here is go to that. All right, so here you can see up at the top right, this is my DuckDNS URL. It is running a secure connection. So that's good. We're going to go ahead and create an admin account here. So go ahead and, oops, I don't know if I typed that right. Let me try that again. All right, so now what we need to do is come down over here. We'll go to the SQL database right here. Our username is going to be Nextcloud. Of course, you may have changed that. If you did, go ahead and change that to whatever you changed it to. And we're going to type in our password there. And Nextcloud. Oops. Now, localhost actually just needs to be DB. That's for the database container. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then we can go ahead and install the recommended apps, and we'll go ahead and click Finish. Now, this part will take a little while as well. It's going to go through quite a process of installing all of the different apps that we told it to here. Here in just a second, another screen will pop up, and it will show us which step it's on as far as how everything is being installed. Okay, so here we are. Everything is installed. You can see that we're still on our secure URL there, so that's good. The next thing we want to do is actually make sure that we've got the extra storage plugin or app set up and installed here. So what we'll do is we'll go up here to, like I clicked up here and went to apps. Then what we'll do is, let me actually just drag that over a little bit. Go to disabled apps. Then we're going to go to extra storage support and we'll click enable. Now we can go to active apps and just make sure that it's set up and going there. So next thing we can do is actually go over here to settings. And then we'll just scroll down here a little bit till we get all the way down to the bottom. Nope, to external storages, there we go. So what you're gonna see right here is it says the SMB client is not installed. So in order to be able to have additional files and folders, external storage available, we're going to have to go back over to Portainer. And we'll have to go over here to the container app or the containers, and then we'll go into, let me make sure I've got this right. Yep, the Nextcloud console. So what we'll do is we'll go to Nextcloud app. We're going to scroll over just a little bit till we get to this little console icon right here. And we're going to click connect. Now we have to go through all of these different commands here in order for this to work. If you skip even that first one, in fact, if you skip the first one, it's not going to work correctly. So do the apt update and let it go through its process here. Okay, so then we can do the apt install SMB client dev. So we'll paste that in there and we'll click enter. And we can just go ahead and say yes. Okay, so now we can do the SMB client install. So we can go ahead and paste that in and click enter. Again, all of this will be in the blog post linked in the description, so don't feel like you've got to try to memorize this as I'm going along here. Okay, so now it's saying you should add this to the INI file, so we'll go ahead and do that, copy, and we'll go ahead and paste. And then we can exit. Like so, and then now that we've got all of that done, we'll just go ahead and reboot. Okay, so now that we've run all those commands, I've actually come back over here and I missed recording it and I apologize. But now that we've run all of those commands, now we can refresh this page and you'll notice that all of that SMB CIFS, that error message is gone from up here. And that's just from running those few commands in the console in Portainer there. So, you may remember that earlier in the video I mentioned that I had a couple of shared folders already set up. So I've got a 250 gig drive and a 1 terabyte drive, and I've got a share on each one of those. So we're going to use each of those, but what I need to do is actually come over here and go to columns and go to absolute path. So we're going to pull a share from each of those. So what we'll do is we'll come over to here and we'll give it, I'll go ahead and click on SMB CIFS. That wasn't an option earlier, but let's go ahead and drag that over like so. Okay, so I'm going to call this share 250 just because I want that to be the, I want to know how big that folder is for later. So I'll just go ahead and I'll type in the IP address of my server. We don't need the port, we just need the IP address there. And then we can just put in that share name, so share 250. Now I'm pulling that not from here, or sorry, I actually need to change that. I lied. It is files 250, not share. Files 250, and that should all be fine. And then I'll just enter my name and I'll type in password. This doesn't actually matter because I've got this share, or I've got both of these shares open to everybody on the network. So the username and password that I use there doesn't really matter. So I can go over here and click this. Now we've got a green check mark there, so that's good. Let's go ahead and do one more of those. We're just basically going to copy a lot of this, really. And this will be like so. And again, I'll type in my name. And I'll type in a password. Again, the name and the password, you can type basically whatever you want in there. It's just this username and password needs it. I guess you could probably pick something else here, but you could probably use login credentials, but it's fine. You can go ahead and type that in. Click the check mark over there. We get a green check mark over here. If it didn't work, you'd get a stop sign symbol right here. So we should be good to go there. Okay, so now that we've got our shares done, let's go ahead and see about uploading a file and see if everything works. Now here you can see we've actually got shares here. And this is the 2 SMB shares that I just created. And I did this because over here, it's going to tell us how big or how much is stored in each one. And it's just kind of a way that I like to use to make sure that I don't try to go over my however much storage I've got available on that drive. Okay, so I've got a file on my desktop. Let's go ahead and just drag that over and let's make sure it works. Okay, so that worked. Now, I have run into a situation in the past where it would only let me upload files of about 1 megabyte. Anything bigger than that would fail. So let me find, there is an AI file that is 1.6, and there we go. An unknown error occurred. So that means we're gonna have to go ahead and edit some additional files to allow us to have bigger uploads than just the 1 or 2 megabytes there. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Okay, so let's go ahead and first do some php.ini files. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this find command right here. And we're going to edit them to allow us to upload files up to 16 gigs. So we'll just do this search here. And it's going to return a few of these. So I want to actually edit each of them and add in this little bit down here. So what I'll do is I'll type in nano. And because I highlighted that, it actually copied it to my clipboard. So I can go ahead and just do that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and do a search, which is a Control W, and I'll paste that in. I'll block that out, and then we'll just go ahead, oops. We'll paste that in there, and we'll press Control O and Enter and Control X to save and exit. So now that we've done the Open Media Vault, let's also go ahead, oops, and do this one. So again, we'll type in nano space right click. We'll do Control W. Okay, we're just going to repeat that process for those 4 files. So we're just going to speed through this so you don't get bored watching me do the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, so one other thing that we're going to want to change here is this user INI. So we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to use a find command. But first I'm going to do, oops, I'm going to do a clear on this just to clean things up a little bit here. There we go. All right, so we've got looks like we've got 3 of these to edit, so we'll just knock those out real quick. We're going to go through the same process here, so we'll do nano. But these are, of course, much easier because there's not as much to go through here. So, okay, so same thing here. We're going to do this multiple times, so I'm just going to speed through the next couple, again, just to make things go a little smoother for you. All right, so now we've got that. Let's go ahead and exit, and we'll just type in reboot. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we've got our PHP that's set up to go here, but our Nginx is still going to restrict us on how much we can upload here. So what we're going to do is the same find command that we've done before. Okay, so there it found 4 different Nginx files here. So nano, and then we'll paste that. There we go. So what we'll do is we'll scroll clear down to the bottom of the script here. And we actually want to stay within this. So the very first thing up here is an HTTP right here. This, or not the first thing, but one of the first things. So what we're looking for is that. So we'll scroll down. We want to go just basically to the end of that, like so. And we're just going to add this client max body size of 0, and that's just going to tell it to just let me upload whatever I want to upload as far as file size is concerned. So we'll go ahead and do a Control O and a Control X, and then we'll go ahead and we're going to do this for these others as well. Again, we want to keep everything inside that HTTP field there, or that section. So we'll copy this, paste, Control O, Control X. So at this point, you may notice quite a bit of repetition, and that's just kind of the process of going through this. Nextcloud's kind of a pain to set up, but we're just about done. So just hang in there and just modify these last few files with me. And then we'll go ahead and reboot again. Okay, so now that we have updated the nginx.conf files there, we've added that client max body size of 0. What we're going to do now is I'm just going to, I've got a Photoshop file down here that's about 4 megs. I'm going to go ahead and drag that up there, and you can see that automatically it's working. That's great. That means that now we can upload files, again, basically up to 16 gigabytes. And again, that's going to be restricted by PHP, but just something to keep in mind here. If you come back here and you go to System, and you scroll down a little bit, where is it? There it is. This still says 2 megabytes. We've bypassed that, obviously. Just know that if you see this, it's wrong. So just, I wanted to point that out. It's something that I ran across when I was doing a bunch of testing with this. So just know that we're good to go there. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at here is actually the Nextcloud app. Now, this is, of course, what you'll use for syncing everything in folders and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead. I'm just going to drag this over to here. I'm going to type in my server address here, like so. I'll click Next. So now if I click Login and grant access, it's just going to hang here. It's not going to do anything. So in order to fix that, what we actually need to do is edit just one file here, and it's going to be, we've got to overwrite this protocol HTTPS here. So let's go ahead and fix that next. Okay, so what we're going to do is, again, we're going to just grab this right here because we're looking for one specific file. And I'll know it when I see it. It's a root/app/config/config. This is the one we're looking for right here. So I'm going to type in nano space, and then what we're going to do is just go down to the basically the end of this again, like so. And I'm just going to paste this in, like so. And we'll press Control O, Enter, Control X, and then we're just going to reboot one more time. Okay, so now that we're rebooted, if I go ahead and I put in my server address and click Next. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what happened here. There was just a little hiccup. Once I realized that I could just go back and go forward, it seemed to clear itself up, so we're good to go. Just know that if you get that little error, you can go back and then try again, and it seems to work, or it seems to have fixed the issue for me. Now we can go and click on Login and grant access. And now our account is connected. Now we can go ahead and sync everything. We can choose what to sync. I'm going to give it a different folder here in just a second. You'll see that I have tried this a few times. So I'll just go ahead and create a new folder. We'll call this Nextcloud Tutorial, and we'll go ahead and go in there and we'll click Select Folder and we'll say Connect. So now it's working down here, and everything in there is being downloaded. So here you can see we've got about 16 gigs. What I do want to do, though, is add those as well. So hopefully it'll pick those up. Okay, for some reason it wouldn't let me connect to those remote folders, those external folders. So I rebooted the server and then everything connected just fine. So just know that when you're going through this process, if you run into an error, you can always go back a step. You can always undo what you just did. And if you need to, you can reboot the server, and chances are that that will fix whatever issue you're running into, as you've seen me do a couple of times even in this video. Okay guys, so now, though these two originally were showing up red, saying that because they were external, they weren't going to synchronize. So I went ahead and just rebooted the server again, just for the giggles of it, and everything worked. Here we are. This is my Nextcloud tutorial. Here you can see again all of these different versions that I've tried. I go into that Nextcloud tutorial. Here we can see that we've got everything that's in there and that share with that. So just to prove this one last time real quick to make sure that everything is working as we want it to. Let's drag this out of the way. All right, so this is just a little clip, a video clip. It's about 2.79 megabytes. Here you can see that Nextcloud is very proactive. It went ahead and found that. I'm in the Share 250. And then if I come back over here and I check that, there is the file that we just uploaded. Okay, so real quick here, let's make sure that our Share 1000 is working. So let's grab this here. We'll just drag that over. Looks like it's uploading just fine there. There you can see it is recognizing that something is going on there. So we'll give that just a second. All right, so now we've got a file there, and then hopefully here in just a second, this should start the synchronization process. And if it doesn't, you can force a sync now. And there we go. Now we're downloading into this folder over here. All right, so that's synchronized. We've got our file here. Now we can click here. Okay, cool. So the video plays. And that means everything is working the way we want it to. Okay, guys, there you go. That's how to set up Nextcloud using Docker, a little bit of Open Media Vault, and a little bit of Portainer. But if you made it this far, congratulations. Here we are about 25 minutes in. I know the average attention span on the internet is very, very short. So if you made it this far, thank you. I really do appreciate it. That really does help my channel out quite a bit if you made it this far into the video. So it's a bit of a complicated process. There's a lot going on as far as editing files and that sort of thing. I will have a bit of an explanation in the blog post linked in the description that will explain how to go through and actually set up containers or map containers in the volumes so that you can, all those files that we edited, you can put in a container and then map directly to those files. That way, if there's an update, it won't overwrite any of the changes you've made. I didn't incorporate it in here. It was something I didn't find out about until the very last minute. And it's kind of, it's a bit more than I expected. And I apologize for that. I will probably try to make a video, a kind of a follow-up video, if anybody's interested in knowing how to set up those containers and map those paths. So with all that being said, I think that basically covers everything. Again, I want to thank you for making it this far into the video. I know this was a very anticipated video. A lot of people asked for it, and I spent quite a while trying to figure out how to make all this work. And I really appreciate you taking the time to watch it. If you've got any questions or comments or anything, definitely leave those in the comment section down below. If there's other videos you'd like to see me make, of course, leave those suggestions down in the comment section below as well. But I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. If you enjoy this kind of content, definitely get subscribed. If you found the video helpful, give the video a thumbs up. That would be great. But as always, thanks for your time. I always appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you in the next video.